For over 500 years, people of Spanish descent have been colonizing the Americas. After Christopher Columbus discovered the New World in 1492, the Spanish, motivated by gold, glory, and God, put forth an intense establishment effort that continues today. One of the defining moments during this era of exploration and colonization is the capture of the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan. According to the editors of Britannica, Tenochtitlan, located in what is now Mexico City, was a bustling city of over 300,000 people. The impressive civilization boasted several temples hundreds of feet tall and surrounded by Lake Texcoco. In 1521, the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortés marched his troops into the 5-square-mile metropolis and captured the city, thereby acquiring the surrounding Aztec lands. The Aztecs are alleged from Aztlan, meaning white land, a reference to their starting points, most likely in northern Mexico. They were additionally called the Tenochca, from an eponymous predecessor, Tenoch, and the Mexica, most likely from Metzilipan, meaning moon lake, the supernatural name for Lake Texcoco. From Tenochca was inferred the name of their incredible city, Tenochtitlan, and from Mexica came the name for the city that supplanted the Aztecs' capital and for the encompassing valley, which was connected later to the entire Mexican country. The Aztecs are recognized historically as one of the most advanced civilizations of their time. The Aztec people had been comfortably settled in the Valley of Mexico for over 300 years. The primary governing force of the Aztec domain was called the Triple Alliance. Built through a common interest in sustaining trade relationships, the use of images, and different craft forms, the three main political centers came to dominate Middle Mexico. This authority did not come to be without bloodshed. Several military victories were necessary to bring the Triple Alliance into power, and their influence was maintained by way of intimidation and violence. The Age of Exploration was an aggressive time in history, to say the least. In the early 16th century, a young Spaniard named Hernan Cortés dreamed of fame and fortune. He set his sights to the New World to attain these goals. Getting his first taste of exploration at age 20, he quickly rose up the ranks to earn his first appointment as head of an expedition at age 34. Cortés quickly aimed his ambitions to conquer Mexico. In 1519, Cortés and 600 men left Cuba with their aims and intentions upon the acquisition of the Aztec Empire. Upon learning the subjects in the areas around Tenochtitlan were not very fond of their Aztec leaders, Cortés found it useful to consign the natives to his own army. As Cortés' plan progressed and his growing army moved toward the capital city, Cortés' men could see the greed and ambition growing in their leader. The men feared for their safety and wanted to return to the sea. When Cortés learned of this, he had his fleet of galleons destroyed. Soon after, he took the Aztec ruler hostage, but still had to defend himself against Spanish soldiers that were coming to arrest him for disobeying orders. Cortés defeated the Spanish and returned to find another fight in Tenochtitlan. The Aztec warriors put up a good fight, but Cortés eventually won and was made governor of New Spain. Destroying a vessel as enormous and well-made as a Spanish galleon is no small undertaking. Although design varied based on intended use, these merchant vessels generally weighed 1 million pounds. Enabled with extra ribbing to withstand the demands of travel and sometimes warfare, the galleons were easily transformed from trade ships to warships. The act of destroying his fleet is such an extreme course of action by Cortes. I believe it exemplifies his intense ambition to conquer and obtain power. Conquistador is Spanish for conqueror. In the beginning of the 16th century, Spain was primed to do some major plundering. Professional soldiers were out of work and ambitious for fortune and glory. The Kingdom of Spain and the reigning members were equally eager to obtain riches and imposed this motivation upon the conquistador, further motivating them to push and take and pillage. Self-assurance, initiative, available resources for the taking, and other worldly advantages such as horses, gunpowder, and cannons gave the conquistador a supreme reign of domination. Past gold and brave soul, it was the sheer inspiration of the Spanish conquistadors that energized their military triumphs in the Americas. How could they get such energy and drive, particularly with regards to working in what they knew to be the wilderness of the known world, far from their home country? All things considered, the appropriate response indeed comes down to the Italian Wars, involving a progression of experiences from 1494 to 1559 AD. A few students of history consider these contentions as the groundbreaking connect between the medieval and current time of military developments in both innovations and strategies. Indeed, these professional soldiers were war-hardened and eager to fight. My interest in the subject of Spanish colonization began after an arbitrary trip to Greenport, New York. As my family and I headed toward the carousel on Main Street, I looked south toward the water and saw an enormous wall of mahogany. A Spanish galleon is one of the more impressive vessels one can partake. The 16th century was a time for many Spanish expeditions in the New World. These efforts were often taken with a fleet of galleons. The vessels were equipped to ship people and supplies back and forth from Europe to the New World. The maneuverability, immense cargo capacity, and the capability to defend itself made the galleon models invaluable to Spanish colonization. Galleons are full apparatus sailing ships historically fabricated fundamentally for war, and which were mostly created in the 15th and 16th centuries. The name comes from galley, which had come to be synonymous with war vessel, and whose trademark curved head the new ship held. A high square forecastle ascended behind the bow. The 3 or 4 poles conveyed both square and fore and toward the back sails. A couple of levels of firearms were conveyed broadside. The biggest vessels were worked by the Spanish and the Portuguese for their productive abroad exchange. The renowned Manila ships of Spain made a yearly outing between Acapulco, Mexico, and the Philippines, conveying silver west and crude silk east for over 200 years. Thank you, Professor Van Etten. This journey of language and culture, of Spanish language and culture, has been wonderful. Happy holidays to you and your family.